Now it's time to hear the stories of Utes in their own words. This is Utes Insider presented by Pepsi. Here's your host, Mike Lageschulte.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. Well, what a great start to our second month of Utes Insider presented by Pepsi, as we were joined last time by former two-time Pac-12 Conference Softball Player of the Year, Hannah Flippen, who was named to the U.S. national team last fall. Hannah, obviously, this summer was hoping to be gearing up for the 2020 Olympics in Japan, but like everything else, that has been delayed until 2021. So we wish Hannah all the best as she has to wait one more year for a chance at the Olympics. And fun to catch up with her and look back at a great run with the Utah softball team with back-to-back super regional appearances in 2016 and 17. And time now to turn our attention to women's basketball as we catch up with former All-Pac-12 post player Emily Potter, who played for the Utes from 2017, or made that 2013 to 18. She left as a school record holder in blocks all-time and ranked in the top 5 all-time in Pac-12 history in block shots, also top 15 in rebounds. But one of the biggest things she did during her career was an article that she wrote for the Utah Daily Chronicle in February of 2018. She talked about her struggles with mental health, battling depression, isolation, and just describing how she had a hard time getting excited about playing basketball. So she sought some help in the fall of 2017, then shared her story in the Chronicle. And she has a new project that she's been working on to help others with their mental health issues. So we'll catch up with Emily in just a moment on Utes Insider, presented by Pepsi.
To hear more episodes of this show and other Utah athletics podcasts, search for them on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Now back to more of Utes Insider presented by Pepsi.
Welcome back to the show. I'm pleased to be joined now by one of the all-time greats in Utah women's basketball history, Emily Potter, joining us from Winnipeg, Manitoba. And Emily, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
We'll get into your career at Utah and then the things you're up to in terms of a new book coming out a little bit later on in this interview. But I thought first we'd kind of start with what's going on with you right now. I understand you were over in the Czech Republic playing your second year overseas, and the season was cut short. And you're like many other athletes at the pro or collegiate level or high school level as far as that goes, where all of a sudden your year was done. So just tell us kind of what happened and how things went down for you when you were over in the Czech Republic and how your season ended.
Yeah, so our season, our last game, I guess, was March 12th. We played at home. We played with no fans. So that was kind of, the first hint that something serious was going on. We were supposed to play our last game before the playoffs started a few days after that. And by the day after our game, our game was canceled. Practice was canceled. And then the next day after that, the season was suspended for 30 days. So at that point, I wasn't really feeling comfortable to stick around for too long because I didn't want to get stuck in the Czech Republic and not be able to fly home. So I made that decision to return home. It was a bit of a process to get home. My first flight was actually initially canceled out of Prague when I was at the airport. So it was a bit of a mad scramble to get me on a different flight the following day to get me home to Canada. So I've been home since about mid-March.
Wow. In terms of the coronavirus, how impacted was the Czech Republic before you left?
Yeah, they were definitely impacted, but not to the level, of Italy. That's kind of what people think of when they think of Europe. The Czech Republic closed their borders down pretty quickly. Nobody was allowed in or out, except for if you weren't from the Czech Republic. So I'm not a Czech citizen, so I was able to leave and fly out. But anybody else that was Czech had to stay home, kind of quarantine, and they were right to isolating quarantine before I even left. So they were pretty proactive about it.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly everything happened, and you're different than some people we've talked to in the fact that you were overseas trying to get back to your home in Winnipeg when this all happened. Have you had a chance to stay in touch with your teammates over there since you left, and how are they all doing?
Yeah, I have had an opportunity to stay in contact with them. They're a little bit further along in their reopening process. So, some of the girls are back together with the team doing a bit of training outside and also inside in the gym. So, I'm a little jealous. I wish I could, be there practicing with them, but I know, we'll get back to opening stuff here soon enough. But we'll see if I end up going back to that same team next year. You know, that's always a possibility, and having that kind of like unfinished business of the season ending makes me, want to go finish it the right way.
Yeah, no question. So I know you played in Poland in 2018-19 and then Czech Republic last year. So, you mentioned another season. What are you hearing in terms of, I'm guessing the season is done. It's just now a matter of, do they start up again for next year? What are you hearing in terms of a startup next fall or next winter for the next season with that team?
Yeah, so things are at the moment continuing to go as planned. Usually I head over to Europe at the beginning of September, spend the month of September training, doing some preseason games, and our season officially begins in October. So, I have my sights set on that, but at the same time, I've also kind of been just taking it day by day because sport is not the most important thing right now. And just gotta try to, take it 24 hours at a time if that's what you need. Or, I usually schedule my weeks right now a week at a time, and I just focus on those workouts and what's going on in that 1 week. So I don't want to look too far ahead. It's really uncertain, but I'm hoping, I'm praying that season will get back going normally in September. Yeah,
I think that's a great mindset. And a lot of the people who I talk to who are doing well have a similar mindset to yours as, hey, it's kind of a day at a time. Can't get too far ahead, but certainly have some optimism for the future. And it sounds like there's a chance you can go back and play there next year. Before we move on to some other things, what was your experience like in the Czech Republic? It's one place I haven't been to. I talk to athletes who do play over in Europe for various sports, and I've heard some crazy stories, some fun stories, and certainly, that overseas experience is part of the thing you go through when you go over there and play. What was your experience this past year over there like?
Yeah, I really liked the country, the Czech Republic. The people were really nice. They spoke a good amount of English, which can sometimes be, a barrier to wanting to play overseas, or, makes the adjustment a little harder. Beautiful city. I really liked my teammates, and it's really centrally located in Europe. So I was able to, hop on a train and in a couple hours be in a different country, which is just a crazy mindset when you come from Canada or even United States,
right,
where everything is. But yeah, it was a great experience, and it really is what you make it. If you go over there, you could go to practice and watch Netflix all day, or, you could try to go out, do some traveling. And I did watch my fair share of Netflix, but, you got to have a good balance and try to take advantage of that opportunity because it's so unique.
That's very cool that you got a chance to experience that. In terms of your facilities and level of play, could you compare it to WNBA here, to college here at the high level of college ball, or is it in between? Where'd you put the level of competition over there?
Yeah, that's a hard question. I don't think it'd be at the level of the WNBA because, in my mind, the WNBA is the best league in the world. Other than that, you have Euro League, which is across Europe as well, which is a really high league. And then you have Euro Cup, which is across Europe. So my team played in both the Euro Cup and the Czech League. So we played within our country, playing against all the other top teams. I think there was 12 of us in the Czech Republic. And then we played in the Euro Cup. So I think there's 24 teams in Euro Cup and, scattered all around Europe. And you get put into pools of 4 teams. You play each other twice, and then you get shuffled around, and hopefully you make, playoffs and continue on playing from there. So that was a super cool experience. We got to go to Poland, we got to go to Turkey, and we got to go to Israel. So
oh, wow.
Not just playing in the Czech Republic, but getting an opportunity to travel that way was super great. I think the European players are super skilled and they do some really crazy things that, even I haven't seen before, crazy finishes, crazy moves. And I thought about that before, like what would happen if my professional team this year matched up with the Utes. And I think I really it's hard to say. I really don't know who would win. Obviously, I got to go with my professional team now because that's the team I'm on. So I'm going to say we're going to play.
Yeah. So to compare it to a high level of college would be a pretty fair comparison. I'm taking it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Very good. How are your numbers this year in terms of your productivity and level of play?
Yeah, I think I finished averaging 10 points, 6 rebounds in about 20 minutes of playing time.
Okay.
So I feel like I'm kind of starting my, way back over a little bit from, you go from high school, then you go to college, you're at the bottom of the, bottom of the food chain. Same thing when you're going up, play professionally. But I enjoyed my year. I learned so much. And, hopefully every year from here on out, keeps getting better.
What's the oldest player you've played against in that league?
That's a good question. There's definitely some moms. Last year I had a couple moms on my team. This year I didn't. Definitely played against some 35-year-olds. That might be the oldest. Yeah.
That was going to be my guess. I mean, it's similar to professional sports here where it's like, hey, it's money. As long as you can continue physically, and if you are a mom and have support around you to help with kids and a supportive spouse, why not keep going? So that was kind of why I asked the question. I know it's, from what I've heard, very similar to American sports where it's like, hey, there's money to be made, keep going. So that's kind of fun to hear. You've had some older players in this group.
Yeah.
I'd like to go back, Emily, now to your background. Growing up in Canada, I know you played a ton of sports. You were into running and volleyball and badminton, track and field, and handball. And there's a sport that you listed, ringette. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did.
What is that exactly?
So it's quite similar to hockey. Played the same way on the same ice, same net, pretty much the same equipment, except for instead of a curved hockey stick, you have a straight stick.
Okay.
You have a straight stick, and then you have a big blue ring. That's why it's called ringette, I guess, I suppose. I'm not sure. And, you have to pass the ring to each other and then stab the ring with your stick to catch it. And then you skate across the ice and try to score on a goalie. Same way, you have 5 people on the ice. It's pretty much all girls sport. Only females play it.
Okay.
Across Canada. I think they play it in, some countries in Europe. But I don't know why I chose that. And I really ran with it. I played until I was in grade 8. So grade 2 to grade 8. And my parents.
That's quite a while.
My parents tried to get me to switch to hockey because there's definitely more of an opportunity to play hockey, in college or even professionally. And I was very adamant about sticking with ringettes. But then I got to high school and decided to, switch more towards court sports like volleyball, basketball.
Well, I'd say you made the right decision. I just had never heard of ringette before, but I'm not from Canada, and I thought I've got to ask about this sport. And of course, in Canada with hockey being big and winter sports being big, it would make sense that they've got more options in that category. Now, you were listed as 6'6", I believe, when you ended your career here. So I'm guessing at some point you had a growth spurt, and you don't see a ton of tall hockey or ringette players. So at what point did you hit that growth spurt?
Yeah, I was very tall on skates. I'm gonna say that. I was scary on skates. I honestly, I was born a normal sized baby. I wasn't abnormally long. I was 20 or 22 inches. I was a pretty big baby. I think I was 10 pounds. But by the time I was 2, 3, I was already a lot bigger. As soon as I, got out the gate, I just started eating a lot. I'm not sure. I found a picture of myself in kindergarten, and I'm just a head taller than every other child. I just look supersized. And it's been like that. It's been like that most of my life growing up. By the time I was in grade 7, I think I was 5'11". Grade 8, I was 6'3". Grade 9, I was 6'5", and then, squeezed out another half an inch or so. But oddly enough, I've never had crazy growing pains or anything like that, which is very surprising. But I guess it was a gradual. I didn't realize, one day I looked over and I was taller than all my teachers already in middle school. It just kind of happened.
Right. Because, some people, they're what you would call average size. And then all of a sudden one year they grow like a foot and they're like, okay, my body's changed. I'm going to change sports. And that plays into the decision making. It sounds like with you, other than maybe kind of from grade 5 to 7, where you had a pretty good growth spurt, you were always, sort of tall and so forth. And how much did that impact your decision, your size, to switch to basketball?
Yeah, I think I always knew I wanted to play basketball. Both my parents played. I have 2 older sisters that played. And I was excited to play, but I just kind of tried some other sports when I was growing up. I really loved ringettes. I tried soccer, did some running, things like that. And I just started in junior high in grade 7 at school. And then I started playing club and just kind of went from there.
It's good to play a lot of sports. I talk to people in strength and conditioning, and they say one of the issues now is too many kids lock in on just one sport too soon, and they overuse muscles and mentally almost get burned out that by the time they reach high school or college, when they can really take off and excel, that they're almost mentally done or they've got some physical injuries. So it sounds like you were wise and got some wise advice to stay in as many sports as you did, as long as you did. Was there a point, Emily, when someone sat you down, maybe your parents or a coach, and say, hey, listen, these other sports have been great for you. You're very good at them, but you've really got a chance to be at a high level in basketball. You should go that route. Did that conversation ever happen for you?
I think the moment when I started taking basketball more seriously was when I was after grade 10. I got invited to my first national team camp. And so it was for girls my age. It was for like an under 16 national team. And that had never been something that had been on my radar. I always had dreams to play NCAA, to go to the States and play in college since I was a kid. But Team Canada was not anything I ever, even dreamed of. So after that, I was like, wow, like opened a lot of doors for me inside my mind, thinking about how high my ceiling was and where I could go with the game. Somebody sitting me down. I mean, I still played volleyball throughout high school, I played some handball throughout high school. I did track and field and cross country purely just kind of for fun and to stay in shape. I liked, competing for my school. There was a time when I was playing volleyball and I was getting pretty good at it. And some coaches were like, oh, like maybe you should play some club volleyball, play outside of school. And I asked my mom and she was like, no, we're just going to do basketball. We're just going to do club basketball. Like playing for school, is enough of a commitment for those other sports. But outside of school, my other training was just basketball.
Well, again, you made the right decision in those regards. You mentioned that you always had the goal of playing NCAA Division I basketball in the States. I was going to ask you, how aware are people in Canada of American basketball and collegiate basketball? I know the U has, for several years, going back to the late 90s, has had sort of a pipeline from Canada to the Utah program. So I know that's helped recruit players to Utah. But, growing up, how aware are kids of collegiate basketball in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think we're pretty aware of it. We get more and more games now on TV, and you can find them online a lot easier. But when I was a kid, my first memories of it are watching March Madness with my dad.
Okay.
When I was younger. And he was a basketball coach when I was growing up. For about 10 years, he taught, junior high boys at my elementary school. So I would go to practice with him. I'd be eating snacks on the sideline, and playing around. Yeah, March Madness was always a big thing on TV, still is. And that's kind of how I got exposed to the game. But throughout high school, we also had the Big Ten channel. We're close to Minnesota and those other states. So I would watch all the Big Ten games, all men's and women's Big Ten games for basketball. And so I really enjoyed watching those. And, I didn't end up going to a Big Ten school, but, I have no issue with that. But yeah, so it was nice to have more access to the games in that sense.
Very good. Visiting with Emily Potter, former Utah women's basketball player on Utes Insider, presented by Pepsi. So we've kind of walked through your youth and how you landed as having basketball as your primary sport. And let's talk about your recruitment process to Utah. I mentioned a few moments ago that Utah has been getting kids from Canada going back to the mid to late 90s, and there's been a pretty good pipeline established. It's been good both directions. So tell us how you ended up coming to Utah. Who approached you? How much did you know about the program? And ultimately, what helped you decide to become a Ute?
Yeah, so Utah's had a Canadian on their team for decades at this point, at least one. I think right now it might be like the most that they've ever had in the last few years.
Yeah.
Even while I was there, we had 3, 4, 5 on a team in 1 year, which is amazing because it makes it feel like, home away from home. But I first started getting recruited by Utah after I attended my first national team camp. So, almost every Canadian, that comes to the Utes has played or represented Canada. So, they're always checking those rosters, who's up and coming, across Canada. And, once I heard from Utah, I did my research, found out their kind of pipeline. And that was something that was really important and to me because all of those players had great careers and then went on, a lot of them, to the Olympians as well. So that was something that, I wanted to do in my career. So I'm like, hey, they did it at Utah. Like, maybe I can do it too. I went on my visit. I had a great visit. I was hosted by Karen, and, Paige Croson and Michelle Plouffe were still there. So I got to, play with them. Michelle Plouffe and Taryn, my first couple of years of college, and Paige, of course, for more years than that, which is great. And I had the greatest recruiting visit ever because I was at the football game where Utah beat BYU after BYU missed like 2 field goals and like hit it off the goalpost.
Yes.
And everyone's rough field. And so that was like September 2012. And it was nuts. That was my first ever college football game.
How about that?
And it was a pretty good first one.
Yeah, of all games to go to, Kyle Whittingham made reference after that. We should be 4-1 instead of just 2-1 because we won the game 3 times, before they finally let it in, type of thing. And I remember that game well. That was wild. So, wow, for you, what an introduction, and the atmosphere at those football games, as you know, is off the charts. That had to be a pretty fun experience to sit and watch that and really be part of that atmosphere.
Yeah, it was an awesome experience. I went up to Park City, just fell in love with the mountains and Salt Lake City in itself, and fell in love with the team and the coaching staff. The team every year, I think, is filled with so many people from so many different backgrounds and lifestyles and parts of the country and world. And we always found a way to blend together and be a super close-knit group. So that's what I love the most about Utah, was the team aspect. And we were always like sisters. And I don't think we would have ever found our way to each other if it hadn't been for basketball. We were, an unlikely bunch of friends, but, basketball brought us together and we loved each other so much. So, making the decision to commit to Utah was difficult. It was a hard decision, deciding between schools, and I was stressed, and, it was a big commitment to me because, I feel like I'm a pretty loyal person, and I thought, wherever I go, that's where I want to go. That's where I want to stay. But I never had any regrets about going to Utah.
You mentioned you saw a lot of Big Ten games growing up. Were there other schools involved in the process that tried to get you, that you were seriously considering?
Yeah, so my big final 2 was between Utah and Iowa State. So
Okay.
Iowa State's not in the Big Ten. But, that was a really tough decision. I made pro con lists. I flipped coins. I went back and forth in my mind deciding, and I actually decided about halfway through signing week. So signing week started, and I still didn't know where I was going to go. And then finally I woke up, one day, I had it in my mind. I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Utah. But I'm going to make it through the whole day of school. I'm not going to tell anybody. Just so I know that this is what I should do. So, I just kept my little secret all day, came home, I signed my letter of intent, and then I went to my volleyball game. And that was it.
And then there you go. I know Bill at Iowa State's a great guy, so I can see why there would be a lure there, and another excellent program over the years that he's built there. Looking back at your Utah career, you mentioned your teammates, how you've been close, and it's worked out well. I think for everyone involved, Canada has had a place to send players in the States for college that has developed them well to send back to the national team, and Utah has had some excellent talent come down, and it's been a win-win across the board. But as you look back at your career, no NCAA tournaments, you made the postseason quite a few times, some highly successful seasons of 18 wins and so forth. So certainly a good career. But as you look back, and maybe not just looking at games and stats, but the relationships, what stands out to you the most about your time at Utah?
Obviously, my teammates, they're still, all my closest friends today. And I'm really blessed to have friends all over the country, in the U.S. and Canada, all over the world. That's what I'll always take away the most, from my basketball career. And then also just the growth as a person. I think back to my freshman self, even my sophomore, junior year self. I feel like I'm even a completely different person from then, but I think that's the point, right? You're supposed to, grow up, kind of develop into the human that you want to be. And now I think I'm finally at the point where I'm like, I like who I am. I've grown. I've learned the lessons I needed to learn, sometimes through negative and bad experiences, but we're all the sum of our experiences. So the growth I had as a person, moving away to college, moving to a different country and that whole change really helped me grow in ways that I don't think I could have if I didn't make the decision to go to Utah.
Yeah, it turned out to be a great career for you. As I mentioned, a couple seasons with 18 wins and Pac-12 honors on numerous occasions earned by you. Talking to Emily Potter here on Utes Insider, presented by Pepsi. Emily, one of 6 players in her program's history with 1,500 points and 1,000 rebounds in a career. That's a pretty elite category you joined during your time here. When you came, Utah was into the Pac-12, but it was certainly still in that transition stage after joining the league, and the groups and the teams you played on were so big. Anthony Leverett was here your first couple of years, and then Lynn Roberts took over, and your teams were so important to really establish this program under Lynn that now is really recruiting well, and they're on the cusp of making postseason here in the near future. But just talk about what Lynn did for your career and your development during your time under her here.
Yeah, it's always hard when you have a coaching change and, you may not have initially mutually agreed to work together and be together, right? But
right.
Coach Rob took all of us players that weren't initially hers, and she used us, and she demanded a lot of us. And me and Coach Rob are both super competitive, so we definitely share that drive. And I think that made us, helped us get along because we both wanted to win so bad. And she trusted in, us and the players that she had when she could have decided not to, right? And it was the same thing back with us. You have to go in with both feet and decide to commit to what you're doing. And I love the culture that the team has now and how the whole coaching staff has worked so hard to implement that. I think Utah will always be a super hardworking, blue collar kind of team. And we don't take things for granted. We're not going to stop fighting. They're going to play hard the whole way through. And you can expect that it's going to be a dogfight every time that you play the Utes. And I love that kind of mentality.
Yep, absolutely. It's crazy as a college athlete. You spend so much time together with your teammates and coaches for 4 or 5, sometimes 6 years if there are injuries involved, and then everyone goes their separate ways. And I'll see athletes in town who have stayed in Salt Lake or they live in California, and it's easy to come back for a weekend or two and see everyone. And you're up in Canada, and now you're overseas playing basketball in the Czech Republic and Poland, and you've scattered a bit. So have you been able to stay in touch with your former teammates over the years?
Yeah, I think we do a good job of trying to stay connected. I made it out to Salt Lake last year, and I'm hoping to still go back this summer if, things settle down a little bit more and open back up. But, I have teammates now that are in Canada. I have teammates that were playing overseas with me, Megan Huff and Erica Bean. So we have our, we're always talking when we're overseas because we're kind of all doing the same thing.
Right.
So it's great. Stay connected that way. We'll get together and watch games, live stream some of the games, and text each other while we're watching, and stay up to date with how the team's doing now as well. So it's great to have all those friendships. It's stuff that you don't get to see your teammates like you did every day in college.
Yeah.
Now it takes a plane ride and some expensive planning to get together, but it's always worth it. And it's always a great time.
That's great stuff. Well, Emily, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on our podcast series is to get into some of your stuff off the court. And it was interesting. You came in and your major was unlisted for a while. You decided on journalism. And in fact, you worked at the Utah Daily Chronicle during your time here. So as you were trying to decide on a college major, why did you end up going into journalism?
Yeah, so I actually did marketing and journalism.
Okay.
So the marketing was kind of a more practical approach. And, I tried a couple different classes my first year, and I tried chemistry and I tried business, introduction to business ethics. Chemistry was not my thing. I ran to my academic advisor and said, please get me out of this class.
Yeah.
So I went the practical route, but then I wanted something that was more like a something I was really passionate about, and writing has definitely been one of those things for me. My senior year of college, I kind of wanted to get involved with some more things outside of basketball that were important to me. And so I didn't have all my self-worth just in basketball, because, you know, we're all more than just athletes. So I really wanted to start to invest more time in that. And I don't even remember how I found out that I could even write for, you know, the Utah Chronicle. I have no idea.
Had you always enjoyed writing growing up? Was that always kind of a hobby that you, or something you at least enjoyed through your coursework?
Yeah, I definitely did enjoy writing, but I've always hated grammar.
Okay, yeah.
So that's why I'm super thankful for editors. You know, I had editors at these papers. Love editors. They do great work.
Yes, can't live without them.
Yeah, so I applied to get on the sports desk with the Daily Utah Chronicle, and, you know, got on to do that. So I did some interviewing of some soccer players, some cross country, and would kind of follow their seasons a little bit and talk to them. So that was super cool, getting to learn a little bit more about different sports. And from there, I started doing more article-based things, columns, writing about, you know, what it's like to be an athlete, different perspectives in that regard. And I did that for the entire year. And it was a great experience. It was super fun. Learned a lot about how, you know, how the newspaper business kind of works, working on a deadline, that sort of thing, working with an editor. And it was a super cool experience to have, you know, my work published. The first time I saw it like printed in the paper was just like a surreal kind of feeling. They post stuff online, and I would get my articles posted online, but every few weeks they have the print version.
Right.
And it was so cool to see, you know, my name beside something that I had written. So that was a super cool experience.
You know, your story is so similar to a lot of people I know in communications and journalism. Is you go to college and you're like, you know, there's not a lot of money in that profession, and it's kind of a touch and go type thing where it can work out, it might not. And I know a lot of people who think maybe I need to get a minor or pursue some other areas where there is a little bit more money to be made, such as business or whatever. But it seems like once you decide to dig into it, your passion for writing or communicating is what keeps you in there. And it sounds like you kind of had a similar experience in deciding your major.
Yeah, I've always continued to play basketball because I love it. And if that love died out, I'd be okay with quitting. And it's the same thing in my career. Once I settled down and completely retired from basketball and started a career, I don't think I could do it if I didn't love it. So I have no idea what my eventual career is going to be. You know, I dabble in a bunch of different things, and it might be, you know, a bit of a journey to figure it out. But having love and joy for what I do will always be super important.
Well, you wrote a column in February of 2018, and I want to spend some time on this because it was such an eye-opening thing for those of us who read the column. And at this point, you were writing for the Utah Daily Chronicle, and you opened up about a very personal issue that really took people by surprise. And it was so refreshing to see someone be able to open up and expose themselves. And you wrote this column where you talk about your struggles with depression and isolation and just the feelings you were dealing with on a daily basis that no one, or not many at least, had any idea about. And you know, we've seen so many people in recent years come out and open up. In fact, Steve Smith, a former Utah football player who I talked to a couple years ago, opened up about his bouts with depression. And we've had some other athletes over the years do the same thing. Alex Whittingham, the son of Kyle Whittingham, did so, as did Matt Gay, one of our kickers. About, you know, those two talked about their battles with mental illness more recently. But your column touched a lot of people and really raised awareness to an issue that so many athletes deal with. So I want to spend some time on this, Emily. I guess first off, just tell us what prompted you to finally put the words in the print and open up and go with this column that you posted in February of 18.
Yeah. So the idea, I guess, to write it was kind of almost thrust upon me. I really felt like I almost didn't have a choice. So how it went is that the newspaper always had some themes. You know, we had Black History Month theme. And I wrote a column about that and athletes. We had different weekly prompts all the time. And then we usually find them out a few weeks before everything was going to be published.
Okay.
So one of them was mental health. And my editor was like, oh, like I would love if you could write about mental health from an athlete's perspective and how that kind of works. And at that point, I had reached out to our sports psychologist and gotten the help that I needed. Everything was still pretty new. I was still kind of trying to figure my way out of my hardest struggle. And I knew I could write a fluff piece. I could write about mental health, but that would just be super disingenuous. And this was my opportunity to kind of share my story and tell everybody that I wanted or needed to tell. For me, it was hard to put into words, like verbally, and explain it to people. But writing was something that I enjoyed, and it was just so much easier for me to get my words out that way. So a lot of people didn't know, or I hadn't told them at that point that I had been struggling. And I was like, okay, you're just going to have to read this article. Like,
yeah.
That's the easiest way that I can kind of share this with you. So, I'd written my article. My editor had gone over it. I opened up to her before writing it, and I said, I have, I think an important story to tell, and it's going to be, really vulnerable, but I'd like your support on this. And she was super supportive. She helped me with the whole editing process of it. She was the first person to kind of read my whole story. And I'm, forever thankful for her, and her help with that. And then it was edited. It was ready to go. And for about a week and a half, I was just sitting and waiting. And I think that might have been the longest and hardest part, because I knew the date it was coming out. I knew it was going to be, printed, and there was going to be a really big, thing done for it online. I had some pictures taken for it and everything. So I was just patiently, not so patiently, waiting for that to be published. And I'm very thankful that I kind of had the push to do it, because I don't know if I would have otherwise, or how long it would have taken me. And I don't know if you're ever quite ready to do big things in your life, but you just kind of got to, take that leap and do it. And it's definitely, I think, still the thing I'm most proud of that I did in college. That was my best work.
It's such a huge step to take. Was there ever a moment where you thought during that week and a half, you know what, maybe I shouldn't run with this. Maybe I've written it, and that in itself could be therapeutic. But did you ever think, you know what, I'm not going to go with this? Did you ever think about pulling the story?
I don't think I let myself think about pulling the story, but I was definitely scared about what people might think. It's kind of like, once it was out, everyone knew my big dark secret.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It shouldn't be a big dark secret. And I felt that stigma myself, trying to come out to people and tell them about my struggles. I couldn't even do it verbally. I had to do it through this article. So I just wanted to try to make that easier. And it has become so much easier. Every time I talk about it, every time I write about it, it gets easier and easier to share and talk about.
From what I remember at the time of the story is you didn't or hadn't told many people. In fact, there may have been a teammate or two, a few family members, but in fact, Lynn Roberts, your head coach, didn't know about it. She read about it or heard about the story was out and was alerted on social media and read it after practice and was like, oh my goodness, I had no idea that Emily was struggling this much. How tight was your circle in terms of people who knew about your struggles before the story?
At that point, there was only, I could count on one hand how many people.
Wow. So I guess, you obviously were writing for the paper. You had a forum. What in the end, as you were making this decision to write the column or not, helped you decide to move forward and do this? Was there anything that kind of prompted you or thought process that you had that sort of helped you reach the decision you did?
Yeah, I think just, learning about mental health and going through the process myself of dealing with depression and anxiety, it makes you feel like you're really alone.
Yeah.
And it's a very isolating feeling. And one of the easiest ways that you can try to help other people with that is by telling your story so that they can say, hey, you're not the only one going through this. So that was kind of my motivating factor. I was like, well, if I, help one person and they feel less alone because they realize that it's very common, then I've done my job. I've done what I need to do. And I think the best compliment I got from somebody for my writing was that they felt like I took the words right out of their head.
Wow.
So that just goes to show that, there's lots of people that are dealing with this. So many people struggle with mental illness in any given year, or not even mental illness, even just a bad mental health day. We all have mental health. So I just thought it was important to share it and be uncomfortable and be scared about sharing it, but do it anyway.
Stuff like this kind of creeps up on you over time, and you really don't realize it's happening. And I'm talking about depression and anxiety and things. But once you got to the point where you were talking to people and getting help, and you had a chance to sort of get out of yourself a little bit and take the 30,000 foot view and look at your life and what had been going on, at what point did you feel like you really started having issues with this?
Yeah, I think maybe there could be like very tiny signs of it earlier on in my college career. But I lost a close friend to suicide in the fall of 2017. And I had zero idea that she was struggling. So a lot of the mental health stuff I do is, in honor of her. But then in my own grief process of losing her, there's a lot of blame on yourself because you might not have known what you could have done better. I just, I tried to deal with the grief, but then it was just more than that, and it didn't go away. And I got into a really dark place myself. So it took a lot of self-awareness to first realize that I myself was struggling, and then figuring out what to do about it. And telling the sports psychologist, what I was feeling, what was going on in my mind, was still probably one of the scariest things I did. But as soon as I did, it was like a weight was lifted off my shoulder.
Yeah. The word I keep having pop in my head is courageous as I listen to you tell your story. And I remember reading the column you wrote, and it's such a hard step to take, but at the same time, you've realized now as people have approached you saying, hey, I'm going through the same thing, and what you did helped me acknowledge that I'm having some struggles, and I can come forward as well and get help. In fact, Jonathan Ravarino, who is now our director of psychology and wellness, came on my podcast a few weeks ago for Mental Health Awareness Month back in May, and just said, one of the things that's helped him and his staff is, college athletes can go to them and they can tell their coaches and teammates, well, I'm just getting some help with my game, aspects of my game, when really there's a lot more going on. And he said for college athletes, they've got kind of a cover, and other people can use a cover as well to say it's this when really it's something else. And that helps them sort of protect their story a little bit and really have some cover for what they're doing. But it's amazing how many college athletes struggle with this. And the perception is, hey, if you're a college athlete, you've been through so much and you're among the best of what you've done. By the time you get to college, man, it should just be, everything should be great, but the reality is as you age and your body and chemicals change and the pressures change and a lot's going on. We know now a lot of college athletes deal with the similar things you've dealt with, and it's so hard to come forward. And as I said, courageous is a word that keeps coming to me. It's been a couple of years since you wrote that story, Emily. I think for people out there listening who are thinking maybe I need to go talk to somebody, and I'm afraid to do it, but they're kind of wrestling with that step of getting some help. Can you tell people in the last 2 years how you progressed and how you're doing that maybe will help someone say, what, I can take the similar step and have some success? How are you doing with things right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. First, I just got to say, Jonathan is amazing. He was, a lifesaver for me, and, Utah Athletics is super lucky to have him. In terms of myself, I've had to do a lot of work internally, figuring out just how to manage myself, manage my emotions. I think self-care is a really big buzzword we hear around lately. Mm-hmm. It doesn't always mean taking a bubble bath or binging Netflix, but sometimes it does. It's whatever works for you and helps you de-stress, decompress. But I don't think it should just be one thing. I think you should have a couple of different things that you can, choose from and have ready if you need it. for me personally, I've had some ups and downs, but I think right now I'm doing the best that I have in the last couple of years, and it feels really good. I went back and I actually read my article in February when it was 2 years since it had been posted. I was like, let me go back and look at this. And it was crazy just reading it. And I remember being in that place and where I wrote that from was so real and so raw to me at the time, but I'm not that same person anymore. And it made me emotional reading it because I felt for, the Emily that was in that situation, but, I'm kind of here on the other side looking at it, and I can attest to the cliche saying that it does get better, but it's very, very true. It does get better. And you're never going to find out if it gets better unless you, keep fighting and keep working to be better.
What a story. I can imagine what that was like for you to go back and kind of reconnect with yourself from 2 years ago as you reread that column and it brought back all the thoughts and emotions you were going through at that time. But I tell you what, to have people like yourself be willing to come forward and share their story. And there's a lot more awareness now about mental health than there used to be, which is a great thing because there have been issues there for a long time and people were afraid to come forward. And now that's starting to swing where people are more willing to come forward and seek help and share their story and to see where you are now 2 years after that column. It's wonderful to catch up with you. You've been through a lot the last couple of years, Emily. I mean, to go through finishing college, having that degree, deciding what to do with your life post your college career. You played, as I said, in Poland and Czech Republic. You've been bouncing around and the scramble to get home back to Canada as this COVID-19 pandemic was thrust upon us. You've had a lot of mental challenges is what I'm getting at the past couple of years. Do you feel like you've dealt with things pretty well? And I'm guessing that the fact that you did get some help has helped you get through these past couple of years, which would be challenging for anyone.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's been a mix of therapy and talking to counselors, psychologists, taking medication, really working on my self-care and my routine and being really self-aware about how you feel yourself feeling so that you can kind of stop any negativity or downward progress in its tracks. So I think self-awareness is always the first step when dealing with mental health or really any struggles in life. You need to be aware of it, and then you can, learn and start to take the steps to get better. Right.
Well, that's great stuff. I appreciate you sharing your story with us this afternoon on this podcast, and your personal life and kind of a side career in addition to basketball is sort of coming together. You've just come out with an adult coloring book called Color Me Calm. I've heard it's great, and it's coming out shortly. So tell us about your book and what is entailed in the pages and how people can get it.
Yeah. So this past year in the Czech Republic, I spent a lot of time coloring in coloring books. And that is really what worked for me. I found that, when I have too much downtime sometimes, that's when my mind can wander and start to go to negative places. So in between practices, and sometimes, you're really tired and you need to rest your body mentally and regenerate. But at the same time, I don't want to just be laying in bed. I don't want to be on my phone or, watching Netflix. So I would color and it would, give me something to do and just kind of calm me down. And I went through books and books of coloring pages. So after Christmas, I decided, and my mom actually gave me the idea. She's like, well, why don't you just do that yourself? I'm like, honestly, I never thought of that. So instead of spending hours and hours coloring in coloring books, I started to design my own. So it all happened in my room. Hours designing these pages and took inspiration from, different designs I saw around me or whatever I was feeling or thinking. And it's finally come together as a book. So hopefully it should be released, I think, in the next week or so. And I'm going to donate, a portion of proceeds back to mental health and try to do some good with the money because, coloring has been such a good thing for me.
That's great. I've seen more adults using similar coloring books in the last couple of years than ever. And as someone who has 2 young kids who weren't in school the past couple of months, there are so many ways now to be entertained, whether it's, Netflix or YouTube or your iPad or your tablet or your phone. And it's amazing how something so simple as sitting down and coloring or drawing or putting a puzzle together, unplugging a little bit, is so therapeutic for anyone of any age. And the fact that you've latched onto that and have decided to come up with your own version of an adult coloring book, I think is great. In terms of the images in the book, you've been all over the place. You've been in Europe. You've been in Canada and Utah. What images did you include in this book?
Yeah, it's kind of more of an abstract type of book right now, with more like mandalas and designs like that.
Okay.
I would love to do something with pictures of places that I've actually been, that I've taken. So hopefully, we can have a second version maybe later.
There you go. Color Me Calm version 2. Yeah.
You're right. I would love to do, all the places I've been, because I have done quite a bit of traveling. But for now, it's kind of more abstract, and I think it's good for any age. I have a niece who's 12 years old, so, I thought of her when I was making it, because I want her to, be able to color and enjoy it just as much as I would.
Very good. So again, what's the website where people can pick this up?
Yeah, so the website will be potteremily.com, and there'll be a little shop section, and you'll be able to order it right from there.
Awesome. Wrapping things up here with former Utah women's basketball player Emily Potter on Utes Insider, presented by Pepsi. All right, Emily, we're all in the same situation where we're at home, or we're hoping things kind of get back to more of what they used to be in terms of a new normal, and we can settle into whatever's next. So in terms of your playing career overseas, in terms of another stint with the Canadian national team, in terms of basketball, what's next for you?
Yeah, so things are kind of at a standstill right now for training as far as Team Canada. So I don't know if we'll get a chance to meet this summer and get on the court and get some training that way. Hoping to be back overseas in September. Haven't signed a new contract yet, but hopefully we'll do that in the next couple months and be back on the court very, very soon.
Well, we appreciate you taking some time to catch up with us and share your story once again. As I said, people who can take that step, it's such a courageous thing to do, but they help so many by sharing their stories about mental health and other things as well. And you were willing to do that a couple of years ago, and I know it really impacted some people, and I hope this coloring book is the next step in that for you. And Emily, thank you for the time and continued success.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, we're back to wrap things up in just a moment on Utes Insider, presented by Pepsi.
Stay connected by searching for Utah Athletics on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Now back to more Utes Insider, presented by Pepsi.
Great to catch up with former Utah women's basketball player Emily Potter. She looked back at her Utah career and talked about her time with the Canadian national team, but also was willing to relive a tough time in her life back in February of 2018, when she was really struggling with mental health issues, depression, and isolation, and brought to light with an article in the Utah Daily Chronicle that she wrote about her struggles. And at that time, it was so courageous, and it still is for anyone to do that. But there's been some other athletes in recent years who have come forward. I mentioned during the interview Steve Smith, the former Utah football player, who came forward about his battles with depression recently. And it helps to have people like Emily and Steve Smith and others share their stories and to make people realize they're not alone in this battle with mental health. And great for Emily to share her story. I remember when she came forward again back in 2018. That was a time when Utah Athletics had really just started to develop its mental health program. Jonathan Ravarino was hired to be the director of psychology and wellness, and that area has really grown in recent years. They're doing great work, but I know Emily was one of their first real big success stories, and the fact that she was willing to share her story publicly certainly helped their efforts, and we appreciate, again, Emily, for dropping by. She mentioned her adult coloring book. The place to get that one more time is potteremily.com, potteremily.com. Go check it out. It should be there in the coming weeks, and thanks again to Emily Potter for dropping by the show. If you have an idea for a guest, check us out on Twitter at Utah Athletics, or send me an email as well, Lages, that's MLAGES @huntsman.utah.edu. Thank goodness a couple years ago, I convinced our IT department to shorten my email address and drop half the last name. It was just taking way too long to get through the whole thing. But drop me a line. Let me know what you think about the show and give me some guest ideas. We're happy to track them down for upcoming shows. That will do it for this edition of Utes Insider presented by Pepsi. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, so long, everybody.
This has been Utes Insider presented by Pepsi. To hear more episodes of this show and other Utah athletics podcasts, search for them on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube.